Welcome back, everybody, to this week's episode of Leadership Ready Room Chats. I am Brandon Jenks Jenkins here with co-host Tom Brother Murray, and we're excited to dive into this week's leader development topic. And this week, it's decision making, but specifically decision making without all the information. Like, what is a leader to do when they have to make a decision and they don't have as much information as they would like? That never happens, does it, brother?
Never. Absolutely never. Man, it's every day, Jenks, right?
I
Whether
know.
you're talking about parenting or business, yeah, all the time.
Yeah. It's
What's
like when do you have all the information to make a decision?
probably never. Or if you wait that long, the thing you were trying to solve has probably been solved through other means, or the opportunity has passed, or the teaching moment has passed, right? Whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So we know it happens, right? And we know that if you're in a leadership position, you're going to be faced with this. And so I guess one of the questions that comes to mind is, at the very basic level, if we just assume that we're going to have to make these decisions without all the information and you're leading a team, then what are some ways to be able to make those decisions confidently, so that your team is kind of, with you on it, and they're not getting anxious that they don't know what to do.
I mean, I love that you got anxious into that question, because I think that is kind of central to this idea of the leader being faced with making a decision. And I think a lot about, well, if I'm anxious as the leader, sometimes I probably need to share that with the team, and sometimes I probably need to keep my anxiety bottled up and decide confidently. And I think there's a time and a place for each. I think the audience matters, but yeah, that's it's hard, right? Um, I think there's two big parts to this. One is really understanding what needs to be decided and buying yourself decision space when appropriate. I think that's different than stalling. And and then deciding whether the team needs to be let in on whatever anxiety you have. And again, in some cases, it is probably the best solution to tell your team, hey, I'm anxious about this. Here's why. Here's what we're doing to mitigate it. And in other cases, your team needs you to be the confident, steadfast leader. And you have to say, yes, this is what we're doing, why we're doing it, and let's go. I'll flip it back to you. Why do you think that the leader uh, needs to be comfortable with this? Why can't the leader just punt until they have complete information?
Oh man. Well, I probably because I don't believe you're ever going to have all the information. And therefore, the longer you wait hoping that you're going to have it, you're going to find that next answer you need to move forward. As soon as you find that, there's going to be another question that comes up. And ultimately, you would never make a decision and act. Like if you took that all the way out, assuming that there's always going to be one piece of information you don't know. Now, I'll admit that there are some leaders who may not believe that. There are some leaders out there who may believe that, no, I don't believe that. I believe that I can get all the information and I will know everything I need to know to move forward. And so, um, that right there's an example of where if you believe that, then you're probably going to keep digging, keep digging, keep digging. Decisions are probably going to be last minute. Maybe sometimes the decision's made too late, so late that you kind of missed an opportunity that you otherwise would have had because you waited so long for all that information. Versus the leader who believes that, no, I'm never going to have it all. And so then it becomes, well, what do I need to know to move forward? How can I move forward confidently? That's kind of what's coming up for me right now. Um, I'll give a brief kind of framework of what I'm thinking here. I think it'll resonate with you, brother, just based on your and I shared kind of background and leadership in naval aviation. You're never going to have all the information. And so what it becomes is, what's the risk here? Like, what kind of decision am I making? And what are the consequences of that? All right. So what are all the things that could kind of happen and go wrong? As many, again, I say all, as many of those things as the team can kind of parse through and figure out, like, what are all these things that could go wrong? How severe is it if that thing happens? And what's the probability of it actually happening? So, like, if I'm going to make a decision and the consequence of that decision, one result is somebody could get seriously injured or maybe die. Okay. That's the most severe. To me, that's like the most severe possible kind of risk, right? Where somebody dies from it. Okay. And so that's very severe. Then I have to ask, all right, what's the probability of that happening? If the probability of that happening is also kind of high, now my threshold for making a decision without a lot of information is much, much lower. Okay. And so there's no hard and fast rule here other than to say it behooves the leader and the team to kind of figure out how, whenever they're making these decisions, what are the risks involved and what's the probability those risks are going to happen. At first you're probably going to be guessing, right? You're not going to have an actual mathematical algorithmic, like, there is a 61% chance that this is going to happen. No, you're going to make a judgment call. You're hopefully going to collaborate with some other people to make that judgment call. And ultimately, for those risks that are acceptable and that the probability and severity are kind of at a level you're like, okay, we can move forward. And I'm okay if that happened. I don't want it to happen, but if that happened, the benefits of it working and that not happening outweigh than the costs of that thing happening. I'll stop there because, dude, that is like, there's so much there in naval aviation that people who are aviators would definitely pick up on. But I'll kind of throw it back to you for some thoughts, brother.
Yeah, I love it, and I was going to take us to a similar place, so I'm glad you got us there. The way that I frame it, similar foundation there. If I ever identify a risk or an outcome that's unacceptable, patently unacceptable, and you hit the nail on the head with right injury or death, and certainly there's many other unacceptable outcomes. So unacceptable outcome is probable. Well, then I need an escape. I need a way out. I need to know before we get to that point, before we cross that red line, because if the conditions haven't changed and we're still likely to have that bad consequence or outcome, well, I need to have a fork in the road, a stop sign, whatever you want to call it, so that I can reassess. And otherwise, I don't want to be headed down that path, right? If you want to make it aviation related, I'm flying toward a mountain that I may not be able to climb over. Well, I can't just grip it and rip it. I need to give myself a way out in case I truly can't climb over the mountain, right? In business, maybe you're willing to lose $10,000 on a particular marketing effort or project. Well, how are you going to know when you're approaching your threshold for loss? And what are you going to do to ensure that you don't cross it? And if you start to think like that, you, the leader, you may be able to achieve a little more confidence in your decision making than someone who does take the grip it and rip it and is just, wrought with anxiety the whole time. Because your team, right? In most cases, we do want to portray confidence to the team. We don't want to say to the team, well, I really think this is going to go poorly, but we should do it anyway. No, nobody's going to be behind that effort. And so your team does need a decision, priorities, guidance, some kind of framework through which they can execute. And in most cases, you as the leader do need to put that framework in place so that everybody knows what the left and right limits are, how far we can go with this before we need to reevaluate. And I think the best leaders strike that balance, right? Hey guys, I'm not comfortable with this. We've got enough information to go 5 more steps. And it's a tightrope, because if you're just overly confident all the time and then are getting and experiencing losses left and right, you will undermine yourself as a leader. So again, a bit of a tightrope there, and I love the risk framework, Brandon. I'll flip it back to you. What's top of mind?
Oh man. Well, one, I like what you just mentioned as a way to kind of move confidently forward is to have alternative plans. It's kind of like playing the what if game. Okay, so we've identified that these things could go wrong. Okay, well, what if this happens? What can we do? What if this happens? What can we do? What if and in your example, okay, what if the day, the temperature, the conditions, the environmental conditions are such that I just can't go over that mountain today? Um, how am I going to know? And then what if? What if that happens? What's my out? What's my diversion? What's my alternate route? What's my alternate landing spot? Whatever it may be, right? So that's one way. Um, there's two ways we could go here, brother. We're gonna play like the you choose, right? You choose which way we go because these two things are coming up for me. One, you touched on it briefly. It's like, how do you as a leader, how do you as a team even prioritize like which decisions to make? That's one. That's one route we could go. The other route we could go is this other to be confident with these kinds of decisions. This other kind of train of thought has come up for me as a way to. It's like a feedback. It involves like feedback, a feedback loop, and the ability to reassess. So which way are you feeling? What are you thinking?
Let's start with priorities.
Priorities. Okay. So one of the reasons I think that we get anxious about these decisions we have to make because we're talking like it's like one big decision. And the reality is when you're in a leadership role, you're making like lots of decisions all the time. Okay. So it's not like you wake up and it's like, I have one single decision to make today. All right. Now let's do this big risk analysis. And that's not real world. We get that, folks. You have a lot of decisions that you're making. So how do we remove anxiety? How do we prioritize that? Well, as always, I know people love this. It depends, right? Context matters. The type of team matters. The type of business matters. This is why it's so important that you really know yourself and your people, okay? And you really understand your organizational, your team mission and purpose. And that gets at the crux of it, okay? It's like, how well do you and your teammates understand what the purpose of that team is, right? Like, what is our mission? What is our purpose? And now we can, if we know that and we have like a North Star, now we can start to back that out. All these other things that are coming up to the surface and they're competing for our attention. They want us to make decisions on them. So first level, which ones get after the North Star? Which ones actually move us towards the direction we want to be traveling right now? Okay. And maybe there's several of those. Okay. But we at least we know that, hey, we know these four things are like kind of the most important things that'll move us in that direction. And I think then from there, you kind of go down, you chunk down, you chunk down, you chunk down. If you never, as the leader, have had these types of discussions with your team to make sure that we're all in alignment with that North Star, the purpose of the business, the purpose of the team, the organization. If we're not aligned with that, we're going to run into problems when it comes to, all right, which decisions do we need to even make first here? I'll pause there if you've got any thoughts on that, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the work you're describing is work that has to be done. And you've implied this for sure. It's work that has to be done before you're facing a problem, right? This is reflective work. This is preparatory planning work. Within my, you know, within my orbit, I try to do it on at least a semi-annual basis. Make sure that the priorities are right. And I actually touch on them on an almost weekly basis. Depending on what your organization's meeting flow or battle rhythm looks like, there's probably some sort of regular touch point with your key leaders or your direct reports. Before my weekly staff meeting, I look at my priorities. And I have priorities and a focus. The priorities are big picture, where are we going? This is how we should spend our time, our focus, our energy. And then we nug down to your point about like another level. Then I nug down to here's what has to happen this week. Not all not the this week stuff doesn't necessarily apply to everybody, but it helps sharpen the focus a little bit. It should be aligned with the big priorities. I had somebody on the team ask me recently, "Well, I don't really know whether I should work on this or that." And we happened to be in the room with a computer up, and I pulled up the priorities. Said right there, "Look at that real quick. Does that help you answer?" Yes, great. And we're then able to make these decisions without stress, right? We can kind of shut out the outside world a little bit, and we know this is where we're going. These are the priorities. This should shape how we spend our time. And then when we get to a tough decision, hopefully it's just a little less anxiety provoking. So yeah, priorities, absolutely critically important. And they can change, right? Don't, please, if you're listening to this, don't think they can't change. Don't think that you can't take an action that's not necessarily in line with them. Stuff happens. The real world's out there. There's all kinds of chaos. I understand that. And big picture, you owe your team some of this framework to help them make decisions on a daily basis and to help yourself do the thinking in the quiet times.
I love that, man. One other, so let's say you don't even have a huge team. Let's say it's a team of one right now. Let's say you're an entrepreneur and you're just starting out. This could actually be even more intimidating, right? This is me right now because I went from being in the Navy and being a leader who had the privilege of being on larger teams, a few hundred people, to now I am not in the Navy. I'm retired and I'm a business of one, with an assistant. And so sometimes that's even tougher, right? Because what we're talking about now, it's like, okay, what's the team mission? What's the organizational purpose and mission? All right, now how can we translate that so that the whole team's on board and we all understand the vision? Well, you'd think it'd be easier with just one. And in some ways it is because it's like, tier one, the mission and purpose of that aligns with me and my blueprint. And so in some ways I understand my purpose and therefore the purpose of the business, right? But it's like, okay, well, when I wake up what am I doing when I wake up in the morning? What is my um purpose for the day? What is that one thing that's going to move me in the direction that I'm meant to be moving? The same things we've been talking about. But for me, brother, it has gotten like more difficult as an entrepreneur, as a solopreneur, as a leader right now of one. And so it's like something that I've found helpful is you mentioned it. I'm able to pivot. So I have a purpose, a vision, a North Star. And at the same time, I'm kind of listening to I'm just listening as things come up. I'm listening for what feels right and what direction I want to go that takes me in that direction. So it's not just willy nilly. But then it's like, okay, well, what is something I really want to work on? So I have the overall purpose. Where is something that I feel would be really beneficial to take me in that direction? Okay, now I have a purpose for that. I'll give you a good example to try to take it out of being real nebulous here. I felt that I had a really poor mindset around sales. Like detrimental for an entrepreneur to have the mindset around sales that I had. It'd be really difficult for me to succeed as an entrepreneur, right? Because I had this mindset around sales. I was very protective of myself, very defensive myself, and like would get into a conversation where I thought I might be being sold on something, and I would actually get real defensive about that. And then the whole conversation, I noticed I was just protecting myself from being sold. And that could stem from a whole bunch of assumptions and fears, like fear of being taken advantage of, whatever it may be, right? They were there. When I slowed down to reflect on that, I thought, I don't believe like sales are a necessary thing. And they could actually be helping somebody who really could use my services, helping us connect, and then potentially really helping to change that person's life. Right. And so I know I know that, but I had all these like assumptions that I was making, these beliefs about sales. And so one of them right now, my intentions is to develop a better mindset around sales. So what did I do? Okay, that's my overall intention. Develop a healthier mindset around sales. How do I best believe I can do that? I believe practice. I believe actually engaging with people. And so my kind of the strategy there is I'm going to engage in activities that sales with integrity, engage with like talking to people in a way that's aligns with me and my blueprint, is sustainable and feels good, sales with integrity. And then and so that's kind of like I'm going to engage in those kinds of activities more often. And then I break it down even further. When I like right now, I'm running an experiment every single business day. I'm going to wake up and I'm going to initiate a conversation about that involves some type of sales or business development. And it's just that, and just initiate it. I don't have to have the conversation. I mean, I will if they reciprocate, but like I can't control if they reciprocate. What I can control is my action. So that's just one way that you could take purpose. And right, I don't have all the information. I don't know what's going to happen. Like, how do you know when your mindset clicks? I mean, how do you see that? That's uncertainty to me. So then we go to what we can control. We've broken it down, and then now we have a priority, and we can take action in line with that.
I love it, Brandon, and I love that, you know, we're making this applicable to businesses of any size. Um, I do think whether you're a solopreneur or whether you have a, 10 direct reports, it is also important to not disguise anxiety or missing information with inaccurate information, with lies, with buffers, because the team will know. If you're holding off on making a decision for a specific reason, either share the reason or tell the team you're not going to share the reason. Don't make up something else. They'll see through it, and that erodes confidence, which is the very thing we're trying to bolster here: confidence in ourselves, confidence from the team. And so, if the business can't afford the thing, say that. We're not in a financial position to do it. That's okay. It's much better to do that than to drag somebody along unnecessarily. And, I don't think we've touched on this yet, at least not explicitly. The way that the information gets delivered from the leader matters. And so, while you'll never be able to quell your own anxiety completely as a leader, I think in most cases, or maybe I'm speaking just for myself here, as you work through these stressful situations, these hard decisions with incomplete information, you still need to deliver your message calmly in most cases. And I think that I found that I have much better results with the team when I can stand up and confidently and calmly say, this is where we're going. And inside, I may be super anxious about it. If I can deliver the message calmly and confidently, the team picks up on that. We're not panicking. We have a plan. This is where we're going. If we have a problem, this is when we'll pivot. This is how we'll pivot. Right? So the tone matters, the delivery matters. And I love that you shared the sales example. I think if you're in a leadership position, anybody, if you're avoiding something, a decision, a project, challenge yourself this week. Ask yourself why. And then identify that next step, just like you did, Brandon. That's such a powerful example. And then the other thing that I'll challenge, we've talked about it, the priorities. If you don't have a clear set of priorities, when you get to a peaceful place mentally, whether it's over the weekend or early one morning, write them down. Don't write them down while you're dealing with chaos or a stressful situation. Find some peace, find some quiet, and jot them down. And I think it'll be pretty impactful. I'll flip it back to you.
Yeah. I think we naturally got into anxiety and confidence, right? Confidently moving forward again. And man, I love that, right? The way you deliver the message, the way you continue to deliver the message to the team moving forward. So important. And also having a feedback loop, right? So something that helps, I think, moving forward confidently with decisions and uncertainty is putting into place a way to ensure that you are getting feedback. And from that feedback, you're pulling out whatever lessons you're learning along the way, and you're taking those lessons and then you're iterating. You're changing what you need to. You're pivoting if you need to, if something's not working. Um, and the way that you do that, I think, is figure out for you and your team what way would help you all establish a rhythm of coming together on these big decisions. All right, coming together then for feedback loops. So, first of all, how are we going to get feedback? What do we have in place so that we can collect feedback? Maybe it's just observations. Maybe you're doing something where it'd be helpful if you had some analytics, some data, whatever it may be. How are you going to get the feedback you need so that then you can reflect on that as a team, individually, as a team, assess it, look at those lessons, and then say, okay, what's the next experiment? What do we need, if anything, to tweak here? Or maybe we go another cycle and let things keep going, right? Because things look pretty good. Maybe right there's a piece of data that's interesting. Why don't we let it go another cycle and see what happens to that? The key is the once you have a feedback mechanism in place, the key then is how are you setting up your rhythm with you and the team to create that loop so that you're actually taking time to look at the feedback and then iterate based on what it's telling you, all in an environment where you're collaborating with the team, the relevant teammates, team members who are involved with whatever it is that's going on, what they're doing. And I think that if you have that kind of a loop in place, that kind of a process, now it doesn't matter as much what the decision is, right? Once you've gone through, okay, I look at the risks, I look at the probability and severity, like we talked about in the beginning. But once you have done that and you decide, yeah, we're going to decide to do this, I think it's having a process in place to know that I'm going to get feedback before it's too late. Right. And part of that loop, then we're going to see, brother, what you were talking about is, oh, this feedback's telling me that we are at this point where we said we would then pivot. Like when we did our what if, right? Well, because we have a rhythm to get into this feedback loop and a rhythm of assessing it and iterating, now we can see early enough when we're at that point where we did the what if game, and then we can pivot if we need to.
I love it, Brandon. That's whether we're making decisions, taking actions, the ability to ensure that we're taking feedback and processing it, like you said, it is absolutely a critical part of this whole loop. And you know what? Leaders that are out there, you don't have to do this alone. Brandon and I talk about this stuff all the time, on the phone, through text message, and on other Zoom calls. We talk about this stuff for our businesses, and we talk about this stuff with a group of leaders that we spend time with that help us flesh out the priorities, deal with these anxiety-provoking situations, and figure out how to move forward with incomplete information. And if being in a group like that, in a room of fellow leaders that are experiencing the same challenges and demands, if that would be helpful to you, reach out because we've got that group. It's called Leadership Ready Room. And we love talking about these types of topics with like-minded leaders and helping one another ask the right questions and think through these things. I'll flip it back to you though, Brandon. I'm sure you've got some more to close us out.
Brother, you close this out perfectly there. I mean, we could talk about this for a much longer. There's a lot here, but I'm just going to rest on what you just said, man. There's nothing like having the right group of people that you can go to with this kind of stuff, have real conversations with, get different perspectives on, sanity check your perspective. There's just nothing like it. And so I posted it while Tom was talking. I'll throw it up there again. If you're interested, if this resonates, we invite you to just check out leadershiprr.com. We invite you to reach out to us through the DMs and LinkedIn, Substack. You can fill out the form on the website. However you want to get in touch with us, we invite you to do so if this stuff resonates. We'd love to see you in the room, Leadership Ready Room. And with that, I'll say until next episode of Leadership Ready Room Chats. See you then.